Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Beluga Pod. It's your hosts, Chris and Will, and we're here to give you everything to stay up to date with crypto in 5 minutes or less as the quick summary. And then, of course, we go deeper and talk about the latest topics in crypto. But maybe starting off with the first 5 minutes of crypto and what happened last week. Maybe, Will, do you want to take it away? We had a kind of a rough start to the week, a lot of hacks, a lot of bad things going on. So give us the quick update.
Yeah, it was a rough week. We had another big event. If you've been in crypto for a bit, you kind of know the stereotype of Bored Apes getting their wallets drained or NFTs stolen and stuff. We had a couple of those events last week. Arguably the biggest one was the Ledger hack, which is I haven't looked at sales numbers, but I think it's still the most popular hard wallet, at least for Ethereum users. But the one of the old Ledger employees, for some reason, still had access to deploy changes on the Ledger Live app, and he got phished and compromised, which allowed the phishers to then basically reroute anybody who was connecting their Ledger to a DApp to a malicious site and get trained. So that was rough as a Ledger user myself. Honestly, it prompted me to start looking at other options because this is not the first time that they've had what honestly is to me is just a negligent issue. The fact that an employee who was fired still had access to deploy things is crazy. We also had the NFT trader platform get hacked, which is just a popular protocol where you can basically swap an NFT for another NFT. It used to be very popular years ago. What happened this time is people still left approvals for the platform to trade their NFTs. Even if it was 2 years ago, approvals don't expire. You have to actually manually unapprove them. And despite these apes being in hardware wallets, the owners left approvals on. And when NFT Trader got hacked, all of these apes got stolen in a pretty funny manner. If we could pull up maybe the message history. But the exploiter and ZachXBT, who's the most popular, call it blockchain sleuth on crypto Twitter, had this funny exchange where the hacker actually claims that they were just kind of looking to gather up some scraps from another exploit they'd noticed and accidentally ended up with all these NFTs, and then went on to claim that people should just send them 10% of the value of all the NFTs and they'll send them back. Like, what could go wrong? They then went on to ask for good treatment because they are a beautiful girl, which, personally, I'm doubt. I don't think this is probably a girl, but I mean, this is one of the funniest conversations I've seen between a scammer and ZachXBT or anybody in a long time.
Just super believable, because
So
I'm a
believable.
kind kid and a beautiful girl. Oh, God.
But anyway, the exploit was resolved a couple hours after it had been found. To my knowledge, all of the NFTs have now been bought back actually at the 10% price and returned to the owners, which honestly is pretty surprising to me. We had two other big NFT exploits also happen last week. I do kind of wonder if these were all somewhat coordinated or something. But it was a rough week for ape owners. It was also a rough week for the rest of the ETH ecosystem because Arbitrum was down for like 4 hours or something, which
Pretty
is
long time, yeah.
I think maybe the second largest ETH layer 2. The cause of it, for anybody who doesn't know, the way that these rollups work is they have one centralized computer called a sequencer, which basically approves all transactions that are happening on the network. What happened here is people were trying to create inscriptions on Bitcoin, which is kind of the latest trend. We can dive further into it later. But they were using Arbitrum to make inscriptions, which basically just spammed the sequencer with literally, I think, hundreds of thousands of inscription transactions were pending at the time it went down. the reason for it going down has to do with paying for the fees on the mainnet. So the main reason that the sequencer went down is that the fees that are required to submit those transactions to Ethereum mainnet basically skyrocketed because of all these transactions they were trying to bundle. The fees on Arbitrum also skyrocketed, and then everything shut down. So that was tough to watch. But that's kind of our 5-minute wrap up from the last. Oh.
And maybe not all negatives though. There was a couple. There were a couple hacks and bad things, but of course, crypto stays dynamic as ever. And on the other side of the world in the Solana camp, a lot of good news for the Solana folks and the manlets over there. Bonk had a really good week, all-time highs, multiple days in a row, and on the back of a rumored Coinbase listing, which came and really ripped the price, and then of course, a Binance listing that continued to rip the price, and then of course ended up being the top signal and has been downward only, but still, to be at nearly a $2 billion market cap for Bonk is a huge deal, right?
Crazy.
Solana also in turn, really skyrocketed up. If you just look at the last few months of TVL here, they've kind of been stagnant around this 200-ish, and then we started to grow 3, 4, 5, 6, and then really in the last, let's call it, month or so, in November has jumped up. Jesus Christ, sorry, has jumped up from $400 to $1 billion, and so really, good on the Solana folks there, and again, still shy of some of the other chains out there, but still.
I mean, I think the interesting thing on the Solana TVL side is kind of for the first half of that big Solana price pump we had at the start, the TVL as denominated in Solana was actually still going down. And in the last 2 or 3 weeks, it's been ticking up super nicely, which is why we've had, on top of the whatever 40% Solana price pump, there's also just 40% more SOL in the ecosystem. So that's cool and encouraging to see.
Totally. So I think that's kind of like the summary of last week at a high level. A couple hacks, but ultimately, a couple all-time highs, and it seems like sentiment is overall really positive as people gear up for the new year, for spot ETF, and a lot of these things that we've been talking about. And so that's the quick 5-minute recap of last week. Cool. And so now we can move on and let's talk about these in a little bit more detail. So yeah, I mean, maybe just going off the Solana news, one of the more hilarious things last week was the Solana phone and the saga and all that. So, Will, do you want to give people like a bit of the context of what's happening with the Solana phone and the saga, which we reviewed and talked about a couple of weeks ago on
a couple of weeks ago, we actually published I think a couple different articles on the Solana phone. One of which I wrote and said that I think at the time only 2,000 Solana funds had been activated. Basically, this initiative was launched a year ago by the Solana Foundation, more or less to have like a Web3 native mobile device. Some cool features, like it has a built-in hardware wallet management system and etc. But unfortunately, nobody wanted it. And in another case of the best product being the thing that makes people money, people realized that there was a airdrop from Bonk to Solana phones, I think like 6 months ago or a year ago almost maybe, which because of the recent Bonk price pump now makes that airdrop worth more than the price of the phone itself. So that started this, I mean, for months it's been sitting at 2,000 sold. And as soon as people realized this, sales skyrocketed. And then people started piling on saying, oh, maybe these Solana phones will be targets for more airdrops, which kind of seems from the chatter we're seeing on different protocols like that might be the case. So basically, after having to cut the price in half because they weren't selling anything, I think the price now is something like $600. These are now selling at retail for $6K in less than a week. I mean, it's like a shitcoin almost. It's been crazy to watch. I mean, we'll see We'll see what usage looks like. I'm still doubtful anybody's really going to use it because, like, it's not the reason that people are buying them right now. It looks like they've come down then. Interesting.
$3,000
I
still.
guess still, I mean, amazing.
It's also funny people are advertising that it comes with the unclaimed bonk. So really just leaning into why people are actually buying these phones.
Well, and the funny thing too is that, if you're gonna resell this stuff, and the arbitrage itself on the bonk is reliant on the arbitrage still being there whenever your phone finally gets delivered. So,
Right.
hopefully for the people who did this, that is the case. But you never know.
Hilarious. Still, pretty cool to see. And like you said, it's just another case of, price is up, all of a sudden tech is better, right? And so like, comes with some free bonk. All of a sudden you're spending $5,000 on a phone when, again, $30 million bonk, even today, is not that much money. I mean, it's not $5,000 worth of money. So,
well, when the buying craze first started, I think the ARB was only like $100 after fees and all of that. So, but we'll see. We'll see.
Like that's $600, like you said. Right? And so,
yep.
There's a long way to go here, but still funny to see, and just another one of the another week in crypto and something retarded happens. So, but yeah, I mean, it does lead into go again back to the bond conversation. It kind of shows like it's been slowly picking up for a while, and it really started to heat up. But then it was around sometime last week. 13th is what, Monday or Wednesday? Thursday, maybe Tuesday, Wednesday of last week, it's really started to pick up, and it was the Coinbase rumors that really started to let this thing rip, and it just went up relentlessly until like literally the Binance listing that night. When it was announced that Binance was listing, it went from around this price, this 28-cent price, up to 34, and then right after it listed, it's been down only ever since. And so I think you mentioned this earlier, Will. It's another example of like the minute you expose this stuff to the perps market, it really takes advantage of it. You could see the funding rate on Binance ahead of time too was super negative. So people were shorting the hell out of this thing, and it's true. I mean, we went from basically sub 1 billion to 2 billion in like 24 hours with zero change. And so Bonk is cool. Don't get me wrong, I'm a big fan, but clearly it's gone a little bit too high right now and coming back down to earth. So we'll see where it lands. I think it's still bullish for the long term, but yeah, we'll see where this thing goes. But it's just another hilarious week. This is probably the one that got the most normies involved, I think, and most people talking about crypto, which I think is another good thing. So yeah, and shout out to Joe McCann.
We'll take anything that gets normies talking about us.
And related to Bonk, one of the I'm in a group chat called the Lab with L, and one of the guys in there had opened this trade that got a lot of attention last week. He had put 16K into Bonk a while ago and longed it with 6x, and had left it open and it's running us all the way up from 16K to a little over $10 million. And one, the comments were hilarious, and two, people were a lot of people were saying this guy's a legend and all that, and also a lot of people were calling this guy a total idiot and really deriding him for keeping this open. And so yeah, I don't know. I think I'm obviously very impressed he's able to hold it. I don't think I would have the courage to hold a shit coin on this much leverage open at this price. At $1 million probably taken off the table, but shout out to him to have the courage to do that. But yeah, Will, I'm curious, what's your reaction? What's your take on this whole thing?
I think you can't be a rational actor and be able to hold a trade open this long. I think he probably is kind of retarded, but that's also what enabled this trade. I mean, I would never have the balls to keep a 16K position open until I made 11 mil on it, no matter how bullish you are on the underlying token. I do... for his sake, I hope that he takes a mil or two off the table. I mean, for almost everybody in the world, that's life-changing money already, and you basically have a free position on something you think is going to keep going up. I don't really see a reason not to do that. But, again, I'm not the guy who caught that trade, and it's up to him at the end of the day. I did
Yeah, what's
see
funny is he had this whole
it's
tweet
come
after.
back a little bit. Yeah.
It
Yeah,
has,
he's been
and
just explaining. It's almost like he's trying to rationalize it in his own head by like
yeah,
talking about it on Twitter.
yeah. I mean, it went up to 12.7, a little bit after, and then he had this whole thread about how he's not closing it, and why he's going to keep this thing open. I thought it was kind of questionable, just because he basically said it's like a levered. It's basically like a levered long on Solana, which probably true. Yeah, exactly. Bonk here is a bet on Solana, and so the thing I don't understand, if you're going to bet on Solana, you can just bet on Solana.
You can literally have a levered long on Solana.
Exactly. Like if you think Solana's gonna be worth $1,000 per token, you just do that, and still you can bet on that while still walking away with $10 million.
Yep.
And having that safely in the bag. So, it just doesn't make any sense. But look, I mean, I think the honest answer is, if I had been in a position where I had taken, like, I was in this group chat with him, and everyone's telling him to take things off the whole way up, and I was one of them. I'm just like, dude, just take the cash. This is great. And if you'd said no the whole time and just stubbornly fucking steel-handed this whole thing, like, at some point you're just like, you guys are all wrong. I clearly know. Like, fuck you guys. And so, again, I think at the end of the day, it doesn't affect us in any material way, other than two things: it brings more people into crypto, because these are stories people like to hear, which is great, and second, it's hilarious to just think about, talk about. So I hope he wins, and if not, it'll just be another funny tale. So we'll see though where it goes though. But look, I'm hoping that he closes thing with $100 million.
Yeah, me too.
Although the math certainly doesn't check out. But
no, I want to see the candle when he does close this thing at 100 mil. I mean, yeah. For his sake, I do hope it works out. That'd be rough to watch happen.
Totally. But
I guess kind of we talked about it a little bit. Yeah, other bullish things. We talked about it a little bit earlier with the Arbitrum conversation, but BRC tokens, which is, for anybody who doesn't know, basically Bitcoin's version of normal ERC20 tradable tokens, have been going crazy. And this is not just in the last week. This is like a month-long push. It's interesting to me that it's now gotten so popular that people are using other chains to create them, and doing it so much that it's literally taking down those chains. I know you've kind of been more involved, at least on the trading side, with BRC tokens, so maybe I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, I've been watching it. I would say, the honest answer is, it's one of those things where you mentioned the other week, but like, if I can't figure out how to do it within like 10 seconds, the energy it takes for me to do it is just too high to figure out. And then, like, by most times I've just missed the trade. And so for most of these things, I just had watched skate by me. I did buy a little bit of movie here and there, and made a little bit of money on it. But, a bunch of these things, I think there's cats too, right? Sats also is one that ripped. And so, like, these just like absolutely retarded tokens. Track Kit, that was a good one too. So, like, just looking at these tickers for a second, these are all the fucking worst tickers on the planet. Like, it's very, like, it very much mirrors like new chain, only the worst shitcoins on the planet.
It's like BSC. It's like reading the BSC ticker list again.
Yeah, exactly. Like, they're just so shitty. But yeah, I mean, I think, look, the story is pretty simple. I mean, I was talking to a friend about this the other week, and the analogy we use is like, it's like landing in America. It's like in the late 1700s. It's like, there's nothing here yet. We could build the whole world, and so it's a very easy thing to understand, and a simple analogy to think about, which is basically like, go to a new chain, and basically we've done this forever, right? Copy ABC from chain X and put it on chain Y, and usually it rips. Now, usually it ends up being a smaller, right? This thing is classic ETH to Avalanche, ETH to Solana, ETH to whatever, right? And then it becomes a subset of what's on ETH, right? So it becomes a smaller version of that, because it's usually constrained by the amount of liquidity on that chain, right?
Yeah.
And the argument for Bitcoin, obviously, is that there's a lot of liquidity underlying Bitcoin, and actually most of the money's in Bitcoin. And so, in theory, you will have way more. The protocols you could build in there are going to be much bigger. And plus, it's earlier, technology's rough. There's a lot to build, so it's like a land of new opportunity. And so I totally get the story I'd say I'm probably a little bit more on the skeptical side, just because it seems a little too good to be true. But more than that, I would say it's also a very different audience and a very different
Yeah.
demographic, a different purpose, right? Like at the end of the day, ETH and all these other things are smart contract platforms, right? They're meant to be built on. They're meant to be extensible. They're meant to be the world's computer. Like that's the whole story. And each of them have their own critiques about Ethereum, so they've changed it to be whatever, right? Whether it be subnets or a more centralized operation or whatever, or it doesn't matter. There's a bunch of ways to do it. Whereas Bitcoin was always intended to be something totally different. Bitcoin is meant to do nothing, right? And that's in my opinion, that's the benefit of Bitcoin. I actually don't. I think that's like the cool part about it, right? It's just a boring thing that you hold and goes up, and that's actually the feature. Like it's very and I would say so. One, it's designed to be that way. Two, the audience and people that hold Bitcoin are just very different. And so, like, I think, sure, you could look at Bitcoin and say there's like X amount of dollars there that could be your addressable market. But the truth is, I think that's mostly dormant cash and like it's not moving and it's like pretty boomer cash. And at the end of the day, like you probably only have like a small subset of that could be opened up. And also, we know it's slow. It's expensive. There's all these things that are wrong with it too. So it's like I don't know. Like I'm probably like, look, does it mean I'm not going to trade these coins? Of course I'm going to trade the tokens. Like I'm definitely trading these coins. But like this idea of actually going to Bitcoin and actually building a new world there, I don't know. I'm like a little bit more skeptical. But Will, what's your take?
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with pretty much everything you said. I do think the one kind of X factor for me is, well, the Bitcoin maxi crowd is definitely like, what we'd refer to as boomers for the most part. Like they're not dealing with programmability. They're not trading on, random new DeFi dexes. Like, they hold Bitcoin and that's pretty much it. And they're famous for doing so. The interesting thing with Bitcoin, at least as it relates to this question of fitting like programmability layers on top of it and actually thereby having more transactions, increasing fees, etc. One of the big, I guess you'd call it a problem that Bitcoin has to solve eventually has to do with the halving rate. So for anybody who doesn't know, halving rate has to do with how many Bitcoins are rewarded to the miners of each block. So right now, I haven't looked in a couple of weeks, but something like about 95% of miner revenue is from those block rewards. And the issue with that is every 4 years, that gets cut in half, which for anybody doing the math at home, that progresses pretty quickly. And if you're running a business where your revenue is going to be cut in half every 4 years, it's a bit of a scary business to be running. Now, the other piece of that revenue, the other 5%, comes from transaction fees,
right?
Which on ETH, it's kind of different. Like they're actually earning a lot from fees, so you don't have the same problem, and there's not a max supply cap. But on Bitcoin right now, only 5% of miner revenue comes from fees. And the one thing that we could see maybe is more Bitcoin maxi support for stuff like this that drives up the demand for block space so that they actually have some kind of alternative revenue source going forward. I mean, we have the next halving coming up in 3 months, 4 months.
Yep.
And block reward is going to be cut in half to 6.25, I think, if I remember correctly. Like, that's tough if you're running a mining company or mining operation. You probably want people to be paying more for block space because that's where you're going to have to make up your revenue. Now, with all of that said, like, do I think it makes any sense that people are trading shitcoins on Bitcoin? Like, no, not even a little bit. I said this earlier. It's like it's trying to fit a square into a round peg. Like it literally just doesn't make sense. Do I think people will keep doing it? Like, yeah, everybody's making money. There's a ton of liquidity flowing into the system. You can see the demand just by the fact that they're literally taking other chains down by how much demand there is for BRC stuff and inscriptions and all of that. So I mean, yeah, I'll be trading it too. I don't think it makes sense long term.
Right.
But I do kind of hope that maybe something comes out of this that does start to drive more demand for block space. If not, I think it'll I mean, I'm sorry to any like Lightning Network believer out there, but I think it's just going to end up being another Lightning Network. that sounds super exciting and everybody's hyped up about, but like when you actually use it, it sucks.
Totally.
Yeah, that was a bit of a long spiel, but that's my take on the situation.
No, I think it's a good point. Honestly, I think the decreasing rewards and the demand and the desire to find another revenue source because of that is a really good point, and I can totally see, like you said, the other side of it would be the Bitcoin community and Maxis getting excited for that reason and driving demand here. I think there's a lot of like real things that need to get fixed, right, along performance and cost and stuff. But I think it's a real take, and so yeah, no, it's a good point. Cool. So BRC, yeah, no, I think it's an area for what it's worth to look out for. I know that there's a ton of venture interest. A lot of founders are going here, right? You see a new Bitcoin L2 every other week, right? Everyone's replicating the same stuff in Bitcoin. And look, Ordinal's been a thing for a while, right? People have been trading NFTs in there with mixed reactions. But look, just like we said in the beginning, right? At the end of the day, we know that number going up is what drives things in crypto, and right now numbers going up, and so we'll see where that takes us. And it should be fun to watch, at least. Although, so I think it'll be a topic. Am I going hard there? Probably not. But do I think it's worth spending some time on and just like keeping an eye out for? Probably. And like the fact that it's hard and kind of annoying to use and not super clear is the alpha right now. Like no one's going to go there. So if you can get there before there and then dump on people later when they figure it out, make it easy, that's usually not a bad move too.
Yep, that's the playbook.
Exactly. So you'll catch me and Will over there. But okay, so we got BRC. What else are we liking out there? I mean, I think as we're gearing up for 2024 here, a lot of people have seen the Q4 kind of mini bull run, this kind of test pump that's coming up, right? And so many positive narratives coming into play next year. And with Solana ripping, right, everyone's kind of getting hyped on the alt L1s again and the L2 story and everything. So we've had a lot of L1s that came out last year before the bull run that never really had a shot in a proper bull run yet. And so I think a lot of people are getting excited about dog coins on those chains, or just or other products in those chains in general. So maybe Will, like, I know you've been looking at a bunch of stuff here. What are you excited about? What are you looking at?
Yeah. I mean, the idea with this is, to your point, we have all these chains that launched last year during the bear market when nobody was even on ETH. So, who are they going to attract as users? And they've just kind of sat dormant for a while. The interesting thing, as opposed to other coins that have just been lying dormant, is all of these alt L1s have raised crazy rounds at crazy valuations. So they have big war chests. They have VCs who would like to sell their token at a higher valuation than it currently is. And you have this huge narrative off the back of the Solana pump of looking for chains that basically, had been dormant and seemed like they might get some attention. So the big one I've been looking at is Aptos, which we can see here. Raised 350 million. I don't know the exact valuation, but they have, one of the biggest treasuries in all of crypto, and yet there's almost nothing going on in their ecosystem whatsoever. So yeah, basically what I've been doing is looking at these alt L1s that I remember launching last year, the ones that I remember having raised large rounds like Aptos. I go on DeFi Llama, I check the big protocols, and I buy a dog coin or two. But that's more or less what I've been doing. My bet is, I think I don't know what Aptos TVL is right now, but it's like crazy low.
84.
That's freaking low for a chain that raised $350 million.
Yes. They could have put a quarter of their raise into the chain. And I
honestly think I kind of expect something like that to happen on a lot of these, because I don't really know how else they're going to attract usage. Like, they need to make price go up and then people will use it, to your point.
Right.
But yeah, that's basically what I've been doing. I've just been finding these random shit chains, I guess. Like, nothing against Aptos. It works totally fine. There's just not really anything happening on it. So
totally,
my thesis is they're gonna pump funds into this, and we'll see where that goes.
Totally, like you said, I think, look, new coin is better than old coin is a very simple thing within crypto, and as simple as these changes have not had a moment to shine yet. Like you said, they've got all the money in the world, and they're going to spend a lot of it trying to juice the price and trying to get projects interested, get people excited. Do they create net new things? Maybe. And if so, awesome. If they don't, I'm sure they'll create a dog coin or two that's worth $1 billion, and that's at least worth trading on its own, which also great. Look at this dollar dominance, dude. 67%. Pretty nuts.
Yeah, liquid staking.
I guess so. So anyway, I would say, yeah, I'm a fan. I think it's a reasonable idea, right, to gear up for that. I think, again, if you're like thinking about where to position for the next coming for the upcoming run, like, I'd say mostly majors, obviously, as always, the way I say it. But and then even then, when you play shitters or play other things, I mostly stay on Ethereum, and then like have maybe a small bag of these alts, a little bit of Solana, maybe some things on like a newer chain like an Aptos or a Say or Sui or something. So I think it's worth the exposure because you never know what's going to take off, and like you don't want to be that person who doesn't. Like by the time you're scrambling to figure it out because the price is ripping, you're too late. Like now is the time to get involved in these things and to figure out where to go, and like little things, right? How to bridge over, how to use the fucking wallets, right? Like which of the exchanges do you have to use?
It's
right?
not
What's
easy
gas? Like
for anybody wondering. Like I mean, I've been trading crypto for years, and it took me a good 10-15 minutes to even figure out like how the fuck to get funds on Aptos.
Totally.
It's not easy.
Exactly. And that's a chain with $350 million. Imagine a chain with less and like a shittier one, So like, now's the time to figure this stuff out, because when you're scrambling, it will take you a few days just to get this shit in, which is just, always out. Every time my normie friends text me about this shit, it's like, I know they never do it. And they have to text me like 4 or 5 times. And then I know it's when they start to do it. And then by that point, it takes them a couple of days to get, because usually they're transferring money from Coinbase. And then you got to wait a couple of days to get it out. And then you got to get on chain, you got to download a wallet. It's so many things to do and you freak out about it. And then by the time you get on there, like, that's when I'm selling, And so like now is the time to figure this shit out, but figure this shit out. But I think, like you said, I think Aptos is interesting. I think Say is interesting. I haven't looked at Mistin too much. Have you looked at Mistin and like the Sui ecosystem? Me neither. Not at all either. So
yeah, we also have some other interesting ones like Metis we were talking about. Like there's so many coins that they've just been dormant forever, and people are finally kind of remembering they exist. And that's a hilarious TBL chart. The price chart looks better, for the record. But yeah, I mean, there's so many of these dormant coins that have just been sitting around. Even the AXS Axes token, like all this shit that's just been staying at the same price for the last year, is now starting to finally move. Yeah, I mean, look at these charts. It's crazy.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm definitely spreading funds out a lot more than I was earlier this year right now. I just mean across different chains and stuff. I'm getting a little exploratory with it.
I love it. Good. That's how money's made.
All right, guys, thanks for tuning in to our second official Beluga podcast. This is Chris and Will signing off. Be sure to catch us next week for another 5-minute recap of everything that happened, as well as pretty big deep dive from 2 pretty large traders in the crypto ecosystem.